My brothers and sisters in Christ, peace and all good to you on this our fourth Sunday of Lent. As many of you know, I travel a lot. Whether it be for the FRIARs or to film videos or to give talks, I am in and out of airports on a regular basis, which means I have the process down to a science. I know how long it takes to get through security, what I need to take out, how long it takes me to get from here to here. It takes me exactly this amount of time, which means I show up to the airport exactly this amount early, which means I am often rushing, running through security, showing up just at the last minute. I don't want to wait, and so that's what I do. Except there was this one time a little while ago where I did exactly that. I showed up right on time, and I was delayed multiple hours. And so there I was, sitting with absolutely nothing to do. And so I walked around a little bit. I looked around and I saw all these things and I began to realize, oh my gosh, this airport has a chapel? What? There's a little museum here. Look at this art. I've never noticed that. Have you seen this art? I had been through this airport, this one particular airport, 20 times maybe. But because I was always running, I always had my blinders up, I had never noticed the world around me. It wasn't until I stopped, I slowed down, I was forced to stay in one place that I could see things that I hadn't seen before. How amazing it is that this happens in our lives, and my guess is that all of you are experiencing this right now. Here we are, 1 in 4 Americans sheltering in place, much of the world stuck to their houses, stuck to a small area. And you might find yourself looking around realizing, have the walls always been this color? You start to realize that you've spent more time in your house this week than you probably have in the last month, and the little details that were there the whole time begin to jump out at you. How interesting it is when we stop that we begin to actually see. But it's more than just our physical world, right? Our social world has taken a major turn of late, and we might find that we're spending a lot more time with our spouses, with our kids, with our roommates than we ever did before, and we begin to notice things about them. Have they always slurped when they ate? Have they always had that weird idiosyncrasy? It's really starting to bother me right now. I imagine that many parents are starting to realize that their kids are quite a handful when you can't drop them off for school for 8 hours. You begin to notice things that you never noticed before. Stuck in this place, slowed down, our eyes are opened. Maybe not just socially, maybe not just physically, but spiritually we start to notice things. Many of us don't have the luxury even to have someone in our house right now, and so we're alone, which leaves a lot of time to think. A lot of time, I hope, to pray. We always complain that we never have enough time to pray, so God has provided, and what we find is that we're not exactly happy with what we see sometimes. Stuck in this place, unable to fill our time with frenetic work, we realize there are parts of us that have been left undiscovered for many years that are a challenge. Maybe we have some habits, maybe we have some struggles in our lives, maybe there are things that we don't want to look at that we're being forced to look at now. We're seeing ourselves in some way for the first time. Our eyes are being opened. How much of a challenge this is for us, but how much of an opportunity. Here we have truly an opportunity to see the world, to see ourselves, to see our brothers and sisters in a way that we've never seen before. Just like me stuck at the airport for multiple hours, we are stuck in our situations, seeing things sometimes for the first time. And it reminds me of our gospel today. We hear of the young man, we hear the blind man actually, who is seeing for the first time. Jesus comes and heals him, and he has this whole world opened up to him. But I think what is so powerful about this experience is that the miracle happens right at the beginning. The miracle is not the climax of the story, it's the start of the story. What happens afterwards, and what we see in our first reading as well, is that once our eyes are opened, we have to do something about it. Look at the story of this blind man. Jesus walks away, and we're left just to follow this, our new protagonist. And what we hear is that this blind man is falsely accused as being a sinner. He's sort of abandoned by his relatives. He gets in fights with Pharisees. And maybe most striking of all, when asked a question, how does he respond? I am. The astute biblical reader will understand that this is a very powerful phrase used only ever by God. It's the name of God in Exodus, and it's also what Jesus says something like 19 times in the Gospel of John. It's the divine name. And so here we have this man saying, I am. And what we realize is if we were to cover up the title blind man and replace it with Jesus, it would fit exactly. This man has taken on the role of Jesus and is our protagonist for a few lines. And what is so important about this, and what I think we can take from this, is that once we've been touched by Jesus, once we've been healed, once our eyes have been opened to something we could never see before, we cannot go back to the person we were before. We begin to take on that identity of Jesus ourselves. Here is this blind man that cannot go back to being blind. He cannot go back to not seeing. He can't go back to laying on his mat. He is now a disciple of Christ. And that ultimately means, in a very intimate way, that he becomes Jesus. He becomes a part of this mission, and people begin to recognize him just as they would recognize Jesus. For all of us, we may not be physically blind, but we have our eyes open in these days to maybe some very serious things within us, serious things within our family that we're just starting to notice, very serious problems in our society. Our eyes are being opened, and so the question we have to ask is, how will we be different because of this experience? It is truly an oppressive time for us, truly something that we would never wish on our worst enemy. But it is also an opportunity, not just to see, but to be transformed, to become what we see, to become like Christ in our world. And so I ask you, in this time of oppression, this time of great discomfort, what are you beginning to see for the first time? How has your vision been changed to the world around you? And then, once you've identified that, once you've had your eyes open, how will you be different now? We are in lockdown in many places, but my guess is that we won't exist here forever. There will be times to go out to re-exist in society. And I wonder, how will you differently treat the poor? How will you see the news a little differently? How will you begin right now to treat your family in a different way? How will you approach your prayer life in a different way? I tell you, once you see, you can't go back to who you are. Once you've been touched by Jesus, once you've been healed, you must go and follow after him. My brothers and sisters in Christ, I know that this is a very difficult time for us. I know that many, many people around the world are suffering. My only hope is that we can make the best of it, that we can see it as the true Lenten time to enter into the desert, to step back, to slow down, and begin to see that airport around us for the first time. May God bless you. May he keep you safe. And please, wash your hands.